Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are so happy to be hosting this event with you today. My name is Bridget McNulty. I'm from Sweet Life Diabetes Community and Diabetic South Africans, and I am so happy to be here today with Vickie de Beer. She is the low carb queen in my books, actually the low carb author of 3 amazing books. So Low Carb Solution for Diabetics was the first, then My Low Carb Kitchen, and her latest book is Low Carb Express. It is fantastic. And we have a copy to give away this evening. Thank you so much for being with us here this evening, Vickie.
Hi, Bridget. Thank you so much.
So one of the most exciting things about this evening's event is that we are live streaming to 3 different groups. So we're live streaming straight into Diabetic South Africans, Type 1 Low Carb UK, and Kids Powered by Insulin. And
Yes.
We are internationally live streaming because I'm in South Africa, as I think many of you are. Vickie's in the Netherlands, and the Type 1 Low Carb UK group is in the UK. So this is a 3-country event. Very exciting.
Wow. Yes.
So I think to start off with, Vickie, could you explain a little bit of your story? How did your low carb adventure begin?
Okay, so my son Luca was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Oh, I'm not hearing you. Sorry, can you double check you're not muted?
Yes. No, I'm not muted. It says the host muted your mic, so I'm not sure whether Paul can hear us, and maybe just put my mic on, Paul. It says the host muted your mic. Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you, but I'm hoping others can. So let's carry on.
Okay.
If you want to tell us a little bit of your story.
So my son Luca was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 8 years old. And we diligently followed all the advice given to us by medical practitioners and dietitians to follow a low GI diet, which we did. Sorry, I'm so confused now. Are we hearing me or not? Can we hear me, Paul?
Okay, great. You can hear Vickie. Sorry.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, so Luca was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 8 years old, and we received information from the dietitian of how to manage his diabetes, and we did that so diligently with low GI and carb counting. And he had a fantastic HbA1c. We focused on the HbA1c, and for us, that was the main focus. But then when we got to the doctor, they always told us, oh, Luca is doing so well. He's in the 1% of his practice, and well done. But we still had these extreme fluctuations, high sugars and low sugars going, and Luca not feeling well. And they said, oh, no, just work on those fluctuations. And when we asked them, what else can we do? Because we are doing low GI foods, like the dietitian said. We are weighing everything. We are injecting, we're correcting, and we are counting the carbs. They couldn't tell us how to solve this problem. And I knew that Luca wasn't feeling well. So quite a few years went by, and I went to a book launch of Professor Tim Noakes, the controversial doctor in South Africa, the low carb doctor. And he sat across from me that lunch at his book launch, and he told me that we actually don't need carbohydrates to be healthy, that it's a big fat lie, literally. And I went home and I was completely shaken by what he told me that day. And I realized that we needed to change, but I didn't know how to. For me, it was very hard to say, okay, we're not going to eat any carbohydrates, and I didn't know what to replace it with. I didn't know how to do it with a type 1 diabetic. And then I spoke to a lady called Ronelle Henschel. She was at that stage living in the USA, and we had like a 4-hour-long discussion over WhatsApp. And she taught me, she said that there's another group called Type 1 Grit in the USA, which I started to follow, that follows a low carb diet, but they teach you how to do this. And the main thing for us was that it's actually not a low carb high fat diet, but a low carb high protein diet. Bridget, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank goodness. I'm back in the chat. I know. I'm so relieved.
Yeah, so that was how our journey started, and it took us really quite a few months to get that all sorted and to start going low carb. We did it one meal at a time. Breakfast was easy because the boys love bacon, they loved eggs, they love sausages. So for us that was very easy. But I must tell you that even after 2 months of this transition, I didn't see a lot of results, and I almost gave up. And then from the 1 week to the next, Luca's blood sugars just stabilized. It was still on the high side, but we started seeing those straight lines that people were posting on the type 1 group, which we've never had. And then suddenly the week after that, it dropped. And suddenly we were also in the 5s and the 4s, 5s, and 6s that everybody was bragging about so much. But the most significant thing for me was that a month later, my mom came to visit us in Stellenbosch in South Africa. And you see your child every day, so you don't realize what's going on with him. And she came to me and she said, "What's going on with Luca? He has changed." And I said, "In what way?" And she says, "He's happy, he's laughing, he's full of energy." And then I realized that how sick my boy actually was before, how bad he was feeling because of all the hypos and the highs and the lows, that whole
The
mad,
roller coaster.
chasing the sugars all the time.
The worst. Yeah.
So I think, and then I started writing the book because in South Africa at that stage, when Luca was diagnosed, there were no references on how to deal with type 1 diabetes with a child. So it wasn't just about low carb. It was also about just dealing with blood sugars, where to inject, things that we've learned over that period of time. Yeah, so that's basically how it all started.
It's amazing to me also because I'm an adult type 1, but when I read the low carb solution for diabetics, I was like, oh, thank God, here's finally the guidebook that I've been looking for. Tell me, Vickie, you said that his blood sugar wasn't changing much and then suddenly it plateaued and then suddenly it went lower. Do you know, with hindsight, do you know what had happened there?
I think it takes so long for your body to work out this residue of carbohydrate and also gluten. I think what's important to realize is that gluten and sugar causes inflammation in your body, and it has such a long-lasting effect on your body. It's not if you quit sugar for a week. Many people start feeling better after a week or 2 weeks and so on. But I think if you get tested, you will realize that after even 2 months, there's still a residue of all those toxins almost. I want to call it toxins because it's not really a toxin, but it is actually poisoning your body. And obviously we didn't go cold turkey. We didn't from the one day to the next stop with our carbohydrates. So it was a gradual process because I had to figure out how to do the dosing of the insulin. How was he reacting to this diet? You can't, with a small child or any type 1 diabetic, I think, just go cold turkey because all your ratios change and it needs to be adapted. So it needs to be a process. So after going through the process, it took us a while, and I think his body was just getting rid of all these residues in his body.
That makes sense. So I'm going to keep asking questions, everyone, for you to reply on the chat or as a comment. So please feel free to comment. And we do have a copy of Low Carb Express to give away to one lucky attendee here today. So we're going to be randomly choosing from the comments. Okay, Vickie. Now this is my biggest question. It's been a couple of years since you published Low Carb Solution for Diabetics. Does your whole family still eat this way now that you're living in the Netherlands? Are you cheating a little bit? Are you back on normal bread? And then what's going to happen when Luca one day leaves home? Because he must be a teenager now.
Yeah, he's 19 years old now. He's
19.
He's starting with university now next week. So for us, it's a big new change in our lives.
Yeah.
With COVID, it will still be at home mostly. So it's also going to be a gradual process, which I'm very happy about. So definitely we still eat low carb as a family. And I almost think that COVID made it easier for us because we cannot go out to restaurants. And that's our main problem, is to go and eat out at a restaurant. It's very hard to sit around people that eat pizza and you say, no, you must have the salad. So that was a big challenge for us always. So Luca is 19 now and it's going very well with his blood sugars. The endocrinologist in the Netherlands, they just say, how do we do it? And I just keep telling them low carb, low carb, low carb.
Hand in your book.
Yeah, it's very hard to eat low carb in the Netherlands. They are very carb focused. They love bread. That's what they eat. They eat sandwiches for lunch, sandwiches for breakfast. So it took me a while to find products, just things like almond flour and so forth. But I must tell you that eating low carb now for 5 years have changed the way that we eat, in a sense that I don't replace bread and replace cake and replace biscuits anymore. We don't eat it. It's not part of our diet. We've replaced all the carbohydrates, and I'm talking about the white, starchy, refined carbohydrates, rice, sugar, biscuits, breads, pasta, those things. We've replaced with vegetables, with nutritious, nutritionally dense, fibrous green vegetables and low carb vegetables like pumpkin and cabbage and cauliflower. So the vegetables in the Netherlands are fantastic. So in that sense, it was very easy to go onto a low carb diet, and also because we've moved away from the carbohydrate rich foods. We don't eat pasta anymore. We don't eat rice anymore.
And that's one of the things I loved about this new book particularly, is that it's not saying like, here's a cheats way of making something that you recognize. It's saying, did you know you can make this completely delicious meal in a really short space of time that happens to be low in carb, but is also delicious. It's not that it's like, you're not depriving yourself of anything because it's low in carb. It just happens to be one of the factors. So we've got a couple of questions coming in, and I'm going to ask a question and then go back to my questions. I have hundreds of questions for you. So Nikki wanted to know, how old is Luca now and how's it going? And you said he's 19 and the endo is really pleased with his blood sugar. That's so awesome. Someone else has said, my son is 16 and diagnosed a month ago. Oh, sorry, that's tough. He is underweight and needs to gain weight, so he does need to eat carbs. How do I implement low carb?
Okay, so that is one of the things that I think is a misconception, is that carbohydrates will make you gain weight. It might make you gain weight, but it's unhealthy weight, and it will definitely put him on the roller coaster with diabetes. So he is going to chase sugars all the time. So what he actually needs is more protein. Protein will make him gain weight. It will give him energy. It will give him muscle mass. So you need to up his protein. I would suggest protein breakfast, bacon, eggs, sausages. Dinner, you can do, bolognese, minced bolognese, but don't do the pasta. Make nice zucchini noodles. So if you need to gain weight after diagnosis, protein is your answer. I would like to just quickly talk about the way that we manage type 1 diabetes on a low carb diet, because this is such a significant and important point. So people associate low carb diet with high fat. And although we don't ostracize fat because your body needs fat, I'm talking about the good fats. I'm talking about saturated fats like butter, the fatty pieces on meat. I'm talking about monounsaturated fats and olive oils, those things, cream, butter. We include that in the diet, but the most important thing with a diabetic is they need insulin. And when you eat protein also has a glucose reaction in the blood, but much slower. It releases so much slower than all those high carbohydrate white starches. So you need less insulin, and you're not chasing the sugars. You're not chasing the high. So you're injecting for the protein. It's releasing slowly. The insulin can catch up to the glucose in the blood, and you have stable blood sugars. So protein for us is a very important part of our diet. So I would say that we are more on a low carb, higher protein, moderate fat diet.
Okay, great. There are so many questions. I'm just going to pick a couple of them.
Okay.
I've got Chantel saying, I started my low carb journey in Feb this year. I was diagnosed in 2016 as a type 1 diabetic. The first 2 weeks of the shift also had my blood sugar all over the place. Now it's the best decision I've ever made. I live with my in-laws and my partner, and his folks still eat normally. I don't feel deprived of anything. Oh, that's so lovely to hear.
That's wonderful, because that is for us the low carb diet. We could see Luca changing his personality, his energy, and he's just a normal teenager now. We can stress about being a teenager. We don't have to stress about diabetes. And that is
teenagers going to keep you busy enough.
Okay, what's more?
Any advice for Bianca? My 4-year-old was diagnosed 6 months ago and doesn't like coconut or almond flour.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's definitely a taste that they need to get used to. I think it took Luca quite a while to enjoy low carb breads and low carb biscuits. We tried hundreds of recipes, and that's why I wrote the recipe books, because a recipe do not go into one of my books if Luca doesn't like it.
That's wonderful.
It is a very hard thing to get used to. The texture is different. I think for a 4-year-old, it's more about texture than the food. Maybe you can try to do a quarter flour and 3/4 almond flour to make it to get her used to it. For small children, I think that's a solution, because it is an acquired taste. Low carb baking is an acquired taste, and people often contact me and say, but the pancakes didn't taste like normal pancakes, or the cupcakes didn't taste like normal. And I understand they don't, because we don't have gluten in there, we don't have sugar in there, and we have nutritionally dense nut flours and things that's actually feeding your child and actually improving their health. Gluten is such a source of inflammation in your body. It causes inflammation in your brain, in your muscles. It causes celiac. It's such a dangerous thing for type. Because celiac and type 1 is very closely related. So I think it's actually so dangerous for type 1s to even consume gluten, because there's a danger of getting a second autoimmune disease through it.
And one of the things I always tell people who are struggling because they're eating a lot of sugar and they don't know how they're going to stop, is that sugar is actually addictive, and we don't recognize it because the more you eat of it, the more you want. But if you can slowly wean yourself off it, then your taste buds actually change, and things that you could have eaten before suddenly seem way too sweet. Oh my goodness, we are getting a million questions. This is so exciting. So I'm like wildly excited about this because I've only done one Facebook Live before. I'm going to ask one more, and then we're going to go back to the questions, because I also gathered so many questions from our community yesterday. So my son is 20 and a big sportsman. He eats mostly low carb as well, but on a training evening, his levels fall, and we find we have to give him some low GI carbs to keep him through the night. Otherwise, he ends with a hypo. What would you suggest as an alternative to low GI carbs on those evenings?
I think when he has really sporty days, very active days, in the first place you have to reduce his long working insulin. Luca played rugby, and it was very tough for us. We reduced how much we injected him for dinner as well. And I always made him a drink with a chocolate milk drink with basically milk and cocoa, some xylitol, and some vanilla essence, just a nice cocoa drink, like a sporty drink, that he could have after rugby to lift his blood sugars. But the main thing I always knew was that the evening was when the blood sugars would go down. It was never right after sport. So we would, in the first place, reduce long working insulin on sport days, and we would reduce the amount of insulin we injected for dinner, because we knew the hypo was coming. It is a problem with sport, yes.
Yeah, and what is amazing to me is that exercise has an 8-hour window that it works.
Exactly. So if you did rugby 2 o'clock this afternoon, it's going to hit you tonight at 10, and that's what we realized. So just do that preemptively, and in the end, if you give them low GI carbohydrate, because the low will come, that's a good way to manage it. It's just don't give too much, because you don't want to chase the sugars, cause a high that's going to just go to a low again.
And over. And just a reminder to everyone that Vickie and I are not medical specialists. So obviously don't make any adjustments to your medication without discussing it with your doctor first. I feel like I should almost have that tattooed on my forehead, because anytime I say anything, I'm like, but remember, be careful, don't make any changes.
Just our own experiences. I see somebody is asking, is fruit part of these recipes? And the only fruit that we eat is berries. Berries have a very low carbohydrate. Luca makes a smoothie with berries. I make berry ice cream. So we focus definitely only on berries with low carb. We have sometimes Luca will have half an apple if he is a bit low. We've treated those with a banana in a pinch when we didn't have anything else with us. So I don't want to ostracize fruit. I think fruit has nutritional value, but it is a high sugar component. And if you're going to add a lot of sugar, fruit in your diet, you're going to see, it's going to influence your total time in range. Bridget, I quickly want to talk about time in range, because I think that one thing that I realized is that for so many years we chased the HbA1c And as you know, if Luca was a 5.4, we will all go, yay, and we're doing a good job. But those extreme fluctuations of highs and lows was making him feeling sick and tired, and we were injecting huge doses of insulin, to get the sugars, and then having the lows to follow, and then having to fix the lows and overcorrect the lows. It's a terrible life to lead. And that is when diabetes control your life, because all you're doing, you're placing sugars, you're fixing highs, you're fixing lows. And then we realized that it's not about the HbA1c. Yes, a good HbA1c will come if you follow a low-carb diet and if you manage the diabetes correctly. But it's most importantly about time in range. For how much of the time in your day are you within your range? And our range is between 4 and 6. And it's that straight line between 4 and 6, because that's normal blood sugars for a healthy child or a healthy person without type 1 or type 2 diabetes. So that is actually when you won't get any of the side effects of diabetes, and when you will start to get your quality of life back again. So it's all about time in range.
That is an amazingly tight time in range. So I think the official guidelines are 70% of the time between 4 and 10. That's obviously not a lot, but a lot of people also struggle for that. So I do want to just, I would not be between 4 and 6 most of the time. So everyone just do their best, obviously.
Yes, obviously we are not always in that range. When there's exams or we are on holiday, then it fluctuates. That is our aim, and we are so happy when we reach that. Because we know in the long run, Luca won't have the complications with diabetes because of that. That is our aim. Let's say that is the aim. That is the dream. That is what we aim for, and we do everything in our power to get to that.
Yeah. Okay, Cindy has asked, when we do more low carb, my 8-year-old daughter gets more ketones present in her blood.
Okay, so ketones doctors are very afraid of ketones. That's why they sometimes will tell you low carb is not very healthy, because ketones are very dangerous when you go into your diabetic coma. That is very high ketones. And children and people normally get that when they are very sick and they don't have enough insulin. So this is not a medical advice at all. This is just what we've learned with Luca. Luca only got ketones when he was very sick and didn't get enough insulin. Okay, and that is dangerous ketones. The dietary ketones that you get, low dietary ketones that you get because you follow a low carb diet, is not dangerous. That is not the harmful ketones. But be careful of ignoring ketones. When a child has ketones, it is best to just give them insulin. There's sick protocols that moms know how to follow. Yes, because then they need to give them insulin. High ketones need insulin. Okay.
Nikki, I agree with you. She's just said Nikki is lucky. Luca is lucky to have you as his mom. When I was reading this book, I kept thinking, geez, I wish that I had Vickie living in my house making dinner for me every day. If you would like to relocate, feel free.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I wrote the book because so many people told me they can't go on low carb because it takes so much time.
It's too hard.
And it's too hard. And because in the beginning, when we started with this low carb journey, yes, we did bake over bread rolls over the weekend. And I did make, our bone broth over the weekend, because that's the only way I could cope while working and fit it in. So it is hard work in the beginning. And if you want to replace other carbohydrates with low carb carbohydrates, you start baking biscuits and cookies and cupcakes when your child is at school, because you have to do it. I see somebody wants me in there. Also,
if you could just make a couple duplicates of yourself, we could sell you. But what's amazing about this book, I do want to gush a little bit about the book. I know you can't because you're the author. But what's amazing about this book for everyone else is that it's divided into 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. Oh, there's the picture. Thank you so much. And 30-minute recipes. And so it's amazing having like recipes that only take 5 minutes and 10 minutes. I have a 4 and 6-year-old, so I'm all over quick dinners, quick healthy dinners that aren't relying on like weird pre-packaged processed foods. They're just what you have in the kitchen. What is actually amazing is that the book has all of Vickie's secrets in it, all these life hacks about how to be a smart cook at the beginning of each section. So it's like, this is how you're going to get dinner on the table in 5 minutes. And it's basic stuff like having your kitchen utensils all in the right place, the ones you use all the time, having them right there. That's so obvious. I'd never thought of it before until I read your book. I went and rearranged my kitchen after I read your book.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, and like the chopping of the vegetables, like if you're going to be in a hurry, make sure you get pre-chopped vegetables. Otherwise, chop everything in the beginning before you start. It makes such a difference. But you've been working with food forever. For the rest of us, none of this would have occurred to us.
Yeah, it is. No, it is true. I'm a professional chef, so a lot of the tips and hints come from a professional kitchen, and I wanted to share that with people because eating low carb can be easy. It doesn't have to be expensive, and you can give people, your family, nutritious, nutritionally dense foods almost, that actually feed them instead of going and buy packets of mixtures and cooking sauces, because I know that's what we fall back on. I lived in South Africa. I had the Woolies lasagna in my freezer for crazy nights. And I realize now that was actually just harmful for liver, because if you have processed pre-made foods, you don't know what goes in there. You don't know what sugars, and they want to make money. People want to make money, so they put fillers in there. They put starches and sugars in there. And if you cook your own food from scratch, you know exactly what goes in there. And that's the bottom line for me with low carb. So it's not just about replacing all the high carbohydrate white starches with low carb vegetables, but it's also starting to cook at home and to know what goes into your food.
So there's two big arguments that I hear all the time. So on Diabetic South Africans, I've gathered a bunch of our questions that I'm going to be asking shortly. But the two big arguments I hear anytime we have questions about low carb is price and fat. So let's start with price. How do you eat low carb on a budget? Because some of the recipes do have amazing, delicious, expensive ingredients. Have you got any tips?
So vegetables are so cheap. If you buy a pumpkin, a whole big pumpkin, a whole head of cabbage, and a whole head of cauliflower, you have your sides for the rest of the week. And then you can maybe splurge on your proteins. But I mean, eggs are not the most expensive protein, and you can go so far with eggs, making a frittata for dinner, making an omelette for dinner. I think using cheaper cut meats, there's nothing wrong with using chicken livers. They are so good for you. They're so nutritionally dense. We basically live on chicken and minced beef.
But you're managing to make it delicious somehow.
Yeah, I try to make it different every night. So I can do a cookbook of 100 ways with minced beef because I have, at one stage I had 3 teenage boys in the house, and that's how you feed them. Especially if you don't do starches to fill up on the sides. So it is possible. I think again, the whole concept of low carb is not to replace every other carbohydrate-rich food that you've ever eaten, every chippy, every biscuit, every thing that you've ever eaten, to replace that with a baked good. It's going to cost you a fortune to have, to replace all of that with almond flours and stuff like that. So we don't do that anymore. We just don't do that anymore.
I also saw someone was defending low carb on a budget and said, if you take all the money you're spending on fast food and all the money you're spending on biscuits and processed foods and prepackaged foods, you're just not buying any of that anymore. So put all of that money towards whole foods. And I really do believe and vegetables. So Sweet Life's approach has always been a moderate approach. We give all the necessary advice and let people decide for themselves. But the whole food thing is very difficult to argue against. Like I have never met anyone who said processed food is better for you. It's just better for us to eat food in its original form and like whole vegetables and good quality proteins.
Exactly.
I also wanted to, I'm sure you told me at some stage that if you don't have almond flour, you can grind up you told me, I read it in one of your books, you can grind up sunflowers and make sunflower seed flour.
So at this stage, we are basically baking with a mixture of sunflower seeds and sesame seeds that I ground up. I make a flour with that. So seeds are a lot more, cheaper than almond flour and those things. So we've progressed from almond flour a long time ago, because the only thing with sunflower is that it becomes a little bit green. You end up with a green bread because there's a chemical reaction that happens. You need to add an acid when you use sunflower seeds to flour. To grind them, you need to add some lemon juice or something like that. Otherwise, you have green bread.
Great tip. I would have just baked everything. So could you briefly address the fat? I know you're not a dietitian, but the concern with high fat, eating too much fat. Do we know the long-term risks of this?
I think there's a fantastic meme that's going around, and it says, "Don't blame the butter for what the bread did." And I think that's the bottom line. So all the research that's been done about fat turning into cholesterol in your veins and clogging your veins, we now know for a fact that it is not the truth. It was research that was very thick because in the 1990s, the nutritional triangle that we knew beforehand was changed, and they placed carbohydrates and grains and pulses at the bottom of this nutritional triangle. It is said that must make part of the biggest part of our diet. So that changed. Whereas normally people ate proteins and fats, and it's good for us because we definitely need the fats. We need good fats, and fats do not. Exactly, for our brains, your vitamins and minerals get transported through your body. There you can see the nutritional triangle that we follow. So this is not the all triangle, but you can see that we have meat and protein at the bottom, fibrous green vegetables, low carb vegetables, and then right at the top we have some fruits that we include and nuts and so forth. So fat has been ostracized wrongly. So we actually need fat. We need saturated fat, because specifically saturated fat, animal fats, have been ostracized. We need that. And we now know that it's actually the carbohydrates, the high starchy, processed carbohydrates like flour and sugar that actually causes your veins and to get harmed, because it literally is like scouring paper, it harms your veins. So cholesterol is not bad for you. We should have cholesterol, and the whole research around it is just not true. So if you're really interested in why cholesterol is good for you, why you do need saturated fats in your body, Professor Tim Noakes did a YouTube video about the cholesterol hypothesis, where he explains it in a very scientific, medical manner, and it's worth your while. If you are still concerned about the fats that you include, then go and watch that. Remember that we do eat fats. We include fats and dairy into our diet, but we eat also a lot of protein because we need to inject for the protein, because Luca, as a type 1 diabetic, needs insulin. Okay.
Yes.
So
great reminder. Thank you. Okay, now I want to go into our community questions while we still have time. And if anyone else has questions, please feel free. We have, they keep coming through, and I'm trying to be fair to, I asked on our diabetic community yesterday, our diabetic South Africans community, if people had questions, and so many came through. So I'm going to pick out a couple. Nomfundo asked, have you got any tips on how I can avoid hypos while on a low carb diet? I'm also exclusively breastfeeding. So I think breastfeeding and hypos is an issue on its own. So maybe if you can speak to low carb diets and hypos in general.
Yes, so I've never been, I'm not a type 1 and I've never breastfed. I think you might be able to give advice there. What we realized with Luca was, once we've had more time in range, and because we have the protein and far less fluctuations and no carbohydrates, so we don't inject huge quantities of insulin. So that is what Dr. Bernstein refers to as the law of small numbers. If you eat a low carb diet, you only need a little bit of insulin to cover the protein and the fat in your diet. So and the carbohydrates in the vegetables, which are very low. So Luca's hypos are not a lot anymore. We don't get so many hypos because he is stable. In the past, I remember when Luca was smaller and he would not eat, say he would miss break and he wouldn't eat break time, and then long break. Also, when he got home, he was hypo because he hasn't eaten. Now, this doesn't happen to Luca anymore. Luca wakes up in the mornings now and he doesn't eat. He's a typical teenager. We will have a cup of coffee at 11. We inject for coffee because caffeine spikes Luca. But basically, that's it. He doesn't eat. He's not hungry because he had a protein-rich meal last night with so you don't get hungry. You don't get that hungry when you're on a low-carb diet. Those feelings that you have to eat something now and it has to be a Coke and a pie, So hypos definitely reduced once we started upping the protein. So maybe her solution would be that is on a low carb diet, but she's also, again, not getting enough protein.
And perhaps looking at long acting and the dosage and discussing it
with
your
doctor.
doctor.
Yes.
The lows you get from breastfeeding are unlike any low I've ever had in my life, because they can't study it because every woman is so different. And so they're kind of just like, it's going to be hectic. From Dr. Bernstein's book, the best advice he gave, which is what you just said, was small numbers, small mistakes, big numbers, big mistakes.
Exactly.
Small doses, doses, small mistakes, big doses, big mistakes. And I think he says that he recommends never injecting more than 7 units for a meal. And if you're eating the right kind of food, then that should be fine, because then you're not going to get that crazy high and then a crazy low because you actually injected way too much or way too little. It's just more of a gentle path, which I found super helpful.
So that is definitely a very important part of it. I wonder, it's just the thing that I wonder is that because I remember being very thirsty when I was breastfeeding, maybe it's also a form of dehydration that gives you the low, because that is definitely that will definitely cause a low if you dehydrate. So maybe getting natural you call it when you have done exercise, electrolytes.
Yes.
And you can you can actually make your own electrolytes, because most electrolytes contain sugar. You do get a few sugar-free electrolytes, but if you take a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda with a pinch of salt and you drink that, and you drink a magnesium supplement with that, it tastes fine with the salt actually. Then yes, we have another question from Randall there.
Yes, I like this discussion. How do we target the less fortunate people and give them the lowdown on diabetes? I feel the local day hospitals don't do enough to educate the people. I'm sad because we've just lost someone in our community. Help. I'm sorry, Randall.
It is very, very, very sad. I did a lot of programs in Khayelitsha when I was still living in South Africa, focused on this because, when we drove into Khayelitsha, all the billboards there, all the advertising, everything focused on this community was because it is cheaper, and I understand that you have to feed your family, but it was always the high carbohydrate, Coke, I don't want to name brands, but rice and porridge and things like that. So they are so targeted, these communities, with the carbohydrates. But if you look at the natural diet that everybody used to eat, just go back to the way your mother cooked. Things like offal and chicken necks and chicken wings and chicken feet and chicken livers and meat. These things was part of the traditional diet, and it's really good for you, and it's not so expensive. And then supplementing that with cabbage, which is you can buy massive cabbage and morogo, which is spinach, those things. So I think for the communities, we need to educate the communities, because they are so targeted with advertising, and tell them that go back to the way your mother cooked. Because that is the bottom line. Pumpkin, these things are nutritionally dense, low in carbohydrates, and it's not expensive.
I think the Noakes Foundation is also doing a lot of work in kind of mass education. That's one of their goals, is to be able to spread awareness to as many people as possible, and to show that it's affordable to eat low carb. Because I do think that's one of, when the low carb movement first came out, it was, I don't know why, but there was this conception that it was very expensive.
It is because of the almond flours and the butters and the things.
Almond flours are expensive,
Yes.
But it is possible to do another way.
Yes.
Michelle has asked, I'd like to work out, are protein shakes good for me?
Well, that depends what the protein shake consists of. If it is a dairy-based protein shake, maybe you add some whey protein and things like that. Definitely, it can't be bad for you. If you have a premix, then carefully get the ingredients. Again, they add numbers, they add flavorants, they add things in that can be harmful for you. It's better to make your own protein shake. If you are on a weight loss journey, if anybody is suffering from if they're type 2 and they are suffering from being overweight, then dairy is not always the best thing, because it contains lactose, and it will definitely make you gain more weight. So it all depends on what the ingredients of your protein shake is.
So Lizelle has just asked the same question that Dipolelo asked, which was low carb. Dipolelo's question was low carb diet and drinks. Explain, please. And Lizelle's is, what about cold drinks? Your opinion on zero drinks? It's a big question.
It's a big question. You know what? It's a problem for us because there's nothing basically free that Luca can just have and enjoy. Everything he needs to inject for, and we have decided to choose our fights. And one of them that we've decided not to go on about is zero drinks. I am not happy with them. They contain aspartame and asulfame, which is harmful to you. I've done research, and most research say that if you don't have a lot every day, then you're going to be fine. I am hoping this is true, because we definitely have, Luca has a Coke a day with dinner or an iced tea. Be limited to one a day. And it's those tiny small tins. We don't buy the massive tins. I never buy a liter bottle or a 2-liter bottle, because I know we won't be able to control that. We won't know how much goes into it. So Luca drinks water. Water is our preferred drink. We have one of those soda stream machines because he loves soda water. We don't even buy the strips for the soda water. We all drink water during the day. Sometimes the kids drink milk. They make themselves a smoothie. Nikolai loves a green juice. We make a green juice in the mixer so that all the fiber is still in there. We don't have a juicer. And then basically Luca drinks coffee. He loves coffee. He only has 2 a day also. But again,
he's such a grown-up. I remember when we did a photo shoot with him, and he was like 12.
Yeah,
and now he's like drinking coffee.
It's the Netherlands. They love coffee here. It's a big thing. But we soon realized that coffee was spiking him. So be careful with coffee. The caffeine can spike you. So Luca needs to inject for coffee. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to follow up. Randall said, thank you for replying. I think our government should do more, like in Australia. For every sugar-containing item, there's a sugar-free item.
Yes.
I mean, I am 100% with you there, Randall. Let us know.
Yes.
We're working with the National Department of Health with the Diabetes Alliance. Things work. They are very enthusiastic, but the wheels move very slowly. But if you have any ideas, we're very open to them. Jonathan has asked, is it possible that type 1 diabetes is caused because the baby was fed too much high carbohydrate fruit purity purees instead of natural breast milk from birth? I mean, I'm going to tell you, in my case, I was breastfed, so not in my case, but I don't know what the real answer is.
Is it type 1 diabetic? I didn't see the question. Okay,
yes,
so type 1.
Type 1.
Type 1 diabetes cannot be caused by too much sugar. It is definitely something that a lot of mums deal with when their children get diagnosed, that people and teachers and children tell them, you have been diagnosed because you eat too much sugar. That is definitely not even remotely one of the causes. So there's a lot of causes, but what we call rather triggers. So you have to be, you have a genetically underlying possibility to have diabetes, and you're almost like a carrier of diabetes. And then there's something that triggers diabetes in your body. It can be an autoimmune response through disease or sickness. It can be trauma. It can even be a vaccination. And I know that is very controversial, but it is
not the right time.
Not the right time. It is definitely a trigger. There's people that have been triggered by vaccinations because the vaccination caused an autoimmune response. That's the reason. Not because the vaccination is bad or contains bad stuff. It's because it causes an autoimmune response in your body. And that is what they call the last straw. And that thing, whether it's trauma or you've been very sick. Luca had at that stage, I don't know if you remember the SARS epidemic, when he had swine flu. He was a very, very sick boy. And exactly 6 months after that, he was diagnosed, because sometimes it takes very long for your beta cells to destroy for your own immunity to destroy the beta cells in your pancreas. Not everybody is even in that regard the same. Some people, react very fast. Others take longer. So it cannot be caused by any form of sugar or diet. Type 1 diabetes cannot be caused by diet. You had it. You were born with it. It was just underneath there waiting for that trigger to come.
I was told it was a combination of 2 or more immunological insults. So like your system gets insulted. And I was like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's
we were 100 questions again.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep up because I'm aware of time. So what cereals can you recommend for type 1s? Yemarai is asking. Oatmeal, all bran, even in moderation, seem to spike sugars. And similarly, Jeanette has asked, is Future Life okay? for diabetics?
So I don't think there's any cereal on the market that fits into a low carb diet. If that is your aim, if you want more time in range and you want a healthy type 1 diabetic, you cannot give them any cereals. We make a granola with nuts and seeds and coconut flakes ourselves that we have in the fridge always. It lasts for months. I think sometimes Luca forgets it's there. I am the one that eats that on yogurt sometimes because I love a crunchy breakfast. I think start the day off with a cereal or a warm porridge from a box is going to give your child
it's a hard start to the day.
It's a hard start because you're already giving him a lot of insulin to cover all the cereals the morning. So you're probably going to have a low by break time. There's going to be impaired concentration, low energy levels. I think you are setting up for a low later in the day at school, and the teacher or somebody will have to deal with that low. The best way to start the day for a type 1 diabetic is the protein diet. I would say scrambled eggs, sausages, bacon, a fried egg if they like it. At the most, I would do a smoothie. For many years, I cooked bone broth. It's like a vegetable broth that I cooked with lots of bones and meat in it. I cook it every Sunday, and that was the breakfast Luca had for many, many years. He had bone broth for breakfast. It's satisfying, it's salty. It's high in protein, it's high in good fats, it's good for his concentration, it gives him energy through the day. So avoid all forms of cereal if you want to go onto a low-carb diet.
I agree. Okay, I want to ask, because we had so many questions about weight gain on a low-carb diet, interestingly, on diabetic South Africans. So Jacques said, I'm eating a very low-carb diet, but I also need to pick up weight. This is very difficult on a low-carb diet. How do I manage to gain weight on this
Again,
diet?
this is the same question we had earlier. It is about
in the beginning, protein.
Yes, it's all about the protein. So if you need to gain weight on a low-carb diet, I would add more protein. That will give you muscle mass. That will give you the weight that you require. If you need to lose weight on a low-carb diet, I would add things like dairy, which is high in lactose, and it will make it very hard to lose weight on a low-carb diet.
Okay, great. Lizelle has asked, one more question, please. What about low GI bread? Is it good to eat low GI?
So in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, and I'm not a dietitian or a medical person, but I think the low GI is an absolutely big fat lie. I'm so sorry.
You're going to be hunted down by the Low GI Foundation, Vickie.
I am in the Netherlands. They must come find me. So guys, if you I promise you, we ate the whole wheat bread, we ate the brown rice, we did the brown pasta, and it always spiked Luca because it's a carbohydrate, and there's no refined white, almost all whole wheat carbohydrate that releases slow in the blood system. They reach the blood system fast, they spike you, they release glucose. It's not good for you. So there is no such thing as a low GI carbohydrate. The only thing there is a low carb carbohydrate, and that is things like cauliflower, pumpkin, cabbage, zucchinis, things like that. And none of the other things will make an effect. Even if you have full grain bread, it releases as glucose in your blood sugar. You are going to get a spike.
So speaking of what is allowed, Abel has asked what fruits are allowed. You said them earlier, but if you could perhaps repeat them.
So we definitely only eat berries as part of this diet. As I said, Luca sometimes would have half an apple, especially green apples seem to not spike him very high. But then we have to inject for that. And that's basically all we eat. At this stage, it's only berries. Okay,
great. One more question from my side, and then we are going to do our random draw to get the lucky cookbook winner. So I asked about gaining weight, and then Susan asked, I need to lose weight on a low carb diet. How? And how is it sustainable? Is the idea that once you start eating low carb, you never eat carbs again? Because I know that some people have said, I tried low carb and I lost all this weight, and then I started eating carbs again and it all came back.
Of course, because carbohydrates, it will all come back. I think it must be a lifestyle change and not just a diet. If you're going to approach it as a diet that you want to do for 2 or 3 months, it's not going, you won't have, especially not on your blood sugars. So in the long run, what we are looking for is stable blood sugars within time range. Because if you do not have that, if you have extreme highs and extreme lows and high blood pressure, glucose, you get complications later in life, and you get a high carbohydrate diet, a diet high in refined white carbohydrates. I must just really specify that we are talking about the white things, the starches, the rice, the porridges, the flours, the pastas, those things. If you have a high carbohydrate diet, you anyway going to later in life find that you have problems like heart disease, vascular disease, fatty liver, because that's what a high carbohydrate diet causes. So if you're already a type 1 diabetic, you are in the danger zone. So to protect yourself and have a healthier life later, it is so important to cut your carbs, and it's a mindset change. So we have been eating this way for 5 years. I would say that we are 90% of the time, and sometimes 95% of the time, low carb. We do have birthdays and special events, and I am not going to force my child to never have a burger again in his life. But what we've realized is every time we do something like that for a special birthday and we have burgers and stuff like that, Luca will come to me and he says, Mom, now I know why we don't do it. Because that night we will be struggling with highs until 2 o'clock at night. I must wake up at night and go and test him, because that is the life. When you have unstable blood sugars and high blood sugars, you are always chasing sugar. And I think that something that I really want to mention is, if you are a normal, healthy person and you eat a high carbohydrate diet, I'm talking about having porridge for breakfast, chips for break, pasta for lunch, drinking Coke during the day, drinking sugar in your tea, having mashed potatoes and rice and things like that. If you're on that type of diet, you're already going to suffer. By the time you are 50 or 40, you're going to start getting you're going to start getting high blood pressure. You're going to start getting just inflammation, tiredness, lack of sleep. There's so many things that's already going to go wrong in your body. So if you are a type 1 diabetic and you've been diagnosed at the age of 4, or like Luca at the age of 8, you're a diabetic your whole life, where you have to inject insulin all the time. If you inject high doses of insulin all the time to chase these white starches and the glucose in your blood, there's an actual real chance that you will get insulin resistant. Because that's what happens to type 2 diabetics. It's normal people eating a high carbohydrate diet their whole lives, and they become insulin resistant. And we talk about insulinemia, we talk about being pre-diabetic. And if they continue eating a high carbohydrate diet, in the end they become a type 2 diabetic and the insulin dependent type 2 diabetic. So for me, the biggest fear is that if you are a type 1 diabetic, you're already dependent on insulin, and you eat a high carbohydrate diet for your whole life, there's a very big chance that you will become insulin resistant. And you can have a type 1 person becoming a type 2 diabetic. And for me, that is the scariest thing on earth.
It's tragic. I know.
The insulin that I give Luca will not have effect. What if I keep injecting him and he isn't going down? His body cannot absorb that insulin. So we do this for the long run. We do this for when Luca is 30, or for when he's 40, or when and we pray that he will reach those ages and that he will be happy, because that is why we do it. It is now because he has quality of life. He has more energy. He doesn't have inflammation. He sleeps better. He's not depressed, because remember, high blood sugars and things like that can really make you depressed.
That can lead to depression. And to me, that's actually the most important part of this, is that it's leading to a better quality of life. My diabetes specialist always says to me, this first question is always, how are you doing? How's your quality of life? And that's such a great way to start any interaction, because diabetes isn't about perfect numbers. It's about how much space is it taking up in your head, and how happily can you live in the world. And that's what I love about this book too, is that it's not saying like, okay, you're diabetic and you've got all these other things to worry about, but now I'm giving you a cookbook that you need to put aside 45 minutes every night to be able to eat a normal dinner. It's saying, hey, we get it. You're a person as well as a diabetic. So here's an easy way to make your blood sugar stable, which is such a gift. So Jean has a fantastic question. Can you please share how you've handled the low-carb diet with siblings of your type 1? Do the same rules apply to siblings in your home? Our type 1 sibling prefers vegetarian or vegan diet. This makes cooking really complicated. And this is going to have to be our last question, because I've just seen the time.
Okay, so the day that I decided to really go for this diet, I sat down. Everybody was, sitting down in front of me, and I said that we will not be able to do this separately. We will have to do this as a family. So from day one, we did it as a family because I was a very busy working mom, and I couldn't see myself cooking two different meals. I also believe that a low carb diet is better for us. Eating a high carbohydrate diet and having huge amounts of insulin is also a problem for non-diabetic people, and it can cause inflammation, other autoimmune diseases. We're looking at things like dementia and Alzheimer's are definitely linked with increased insulin levels in your brain. Research has shown this. So we have from the start realized that we were never supposed as human beings to eat so much carbohydrates. This was changed. It never was like that. So we wanted to change as a family. And Nikolai, our little one, he was 4 years old when Luca was diagnosed. He has eaten low carb for a lot longer than any of us, compared in his lifetime.
Life. Yeah.
So for him, that's just the food that we eat. And he's actually quite, health conscious also. And he will tell me, Mom, that's not healthy. If we are in a pinch and we're somewhere, so they check me. It's not the other way around. Yeah. So
Amazing.
it was a family decision, and it's still a family decision. We're doing it as a family.
Great. So I'm going to once again say that Vickie and I are not medical specialists. We are not doctors. Please don't make any changes to your insulin regime or even to your diet without speaking to a doctor or a dietitian. And now in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to ask if we can get the covers of Vickie's books up so that you'll know how to recognize them. So that's my Low Carb Kitchen. Low Carb Express is the fabulous new one, and the Low Carb Solution for Diabetics. And I am blind scrolling through. This is like the very high-tech way of doing things. And there. Okay, the winner is Jonathan Rogers. Gets the book. Jonathan, please will you send me a direct message on Facebook through Diabetic South Africans, and we will arrange to get you a copy of Low Carb Express. Vickie, thank you so much for your time. Wow, I feel like we've been on a happy roller coaster of advice.
It's so dark here. Sorry, I didn't realize that it's just dark in the Netherlands. I'm sitting in the dark. I didn't even realize. It was wonderful. Thank you so much, and everybody's questions and so forth. So it's also
and just tell us where can we get the book, and how do people connect with you? All of that stuff.
I'm on Facebook just as Vickie de Beer. I don't have a professional page, but I do share a lot of low carb recipes there. And also, please buy the book on Take-A-Lot. In the UK, the Type 1 diabetic book is available on Amazon. And next week I'm going to be in South Africa for a week, and we have we have a lovely event for low carb breakfast at the Grand Roche restaurant. So you are welcome to look on my page for details about that. On the 10th of April.
That's on Saturday, the 10th of April.
Yeah, yes, Saturday on the 10th of April.
And also because, again, you can't sell it too hard, but I can. And I'm excited because I get to interview Vickie in real life. But you get a low-carb breakfast and a copy of the book as part of your ticket, which I think is such a great idea, because then you inspire people, they get to eat the delicious food, and then they can go home and cook it. Which is
I hope so. I really hope so. Yeah.
And we had one last lovely message saying, "Hi, Vickie. I struggled to read your book. In the beginning, when our son was newly diagnosed, Lucas' story broke my heart. It was so close to home. Thank you so much for advocating for low-carb natural eating."
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That is very lovely. That is why, because I sat there and I had so many questions and nowhere to find it. And that is why we did it, and why we still do it. Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Thank you to our Diabetic South Africans, our team on Kids Powered by Insulin, our team on Type 1 Low Carb UK. And thank you so much, Vickie, for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.